Oh, thank you. Good evening and welcome to Crawley Borough Council's Overview and Scrutiny Commission meeting of the 23rd of July. I am Councillor Marion Ayling, Chair of the OS Overview and Scrutiny Commission. I would like to welcome Councillor MTIAS on to the first meeting. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the spiral staircase and through the main reception doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-storey car park at Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, please wait in the council chamber and you will be guided by a member of staff to the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed by the council's YouTube channel. Please note that there are no comment functions available as part of the webcasting. The council is the data controller and will retain the data collected during the webcast. This will be done in accordance to the council's published data retention policy. Any members of the public seated in the public gallery be aware that by entering the chamber they are consenting to their image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting and for training purposes. Councillors are reminded to take note of what is displayed on the screen in the room, as this shows what is being recorded and webcasted. Cameras are currently set to capture you in a seated position, so please remain seated during speaking. You can request us to speak as usual in the committees by raising your hand. To speak by pressing the button with the face on it, and the microphone will go green for you to go live. Do I need to read that bit that you've written in pen? After the meeting, please can leave by the Create building. We will now commence with apologies for absence.
Okay. We've received apologies of absence from Councillor Ashraf, and Councillor Lanza will be joining us late this evening. Thank you.
Disclosure of interest and whipping declaration. Does any members have disclosure of interest or whipping declarations?
Yes, for item 8, I'm an NHS public governor.
Thank you. Minutes. Now we come to the minutes of the last meeting held on the 3rd of June. Does the Commission agree that the minutes are an actual of the meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Public question time. We don't seem to have anyone asking. No, you're not here to ask a question. No. Right, item 5. We will start with the Housing Association Scrutiny Panel final report from Councillor Lunnan, Chair of the Scrutiny Panel. This report is now going to Cabinet on the 4th of September, but the comments will be incorporated into the report. Councillor Lunnan, please can you introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So because this scrutiny panel was set up last year by the OSC panel, so just to new members see some context for it. We get a report a few years back about what was going on with housing associations in Crawley, but members at the time felt that with some ongoing issues in housing associations, particularly around repairs and antisocial behaviour, we actually wanted to carry out a full scrutiny panel investigation into our housing associations that are operating in Crawley. Now, for those who are aware, again, housing associations might be something new. You might not have many in your wards that you represent. So roughly a quarter of our social housing stock in the town is association owned. The other 3/4 is owned by Crawley Homes. Technically, Crawley is what's called a registered social landlord, which is what all the housing associations are. So their view by the government is effectively the same thing, just one of them we have a lot more control of as the borough council. So we run Crawley homes ourselves. So some of us had issues before where we felt the housing association weren't able to respond to our issues, and we thought a deeper dive into how they're doing in Crawley and how their residents was worthwhile. So as a panel, we met 4 times. There were 5 who were all excellent in their own way. Councillor Ayling, Councillor Hellier, Pritchard, who's no longer on OSC, and indeed Councillor Piggott, who's no longer on the council, but he was a member of the panel and a valued member of the panel. So I'm sorry he can't be here to witness its fruits of our labour, but there we go. So as a panel, we met 4 times. We spoke of officers on the council, and we invited 4 different housing associations, ones that we'd identified as being particularly either impactful due to the large number of residents they have, or impactful due to the large number of casework they generate. And they were, I'm just going to remind myself, they were Guinness, Mowat, Hyde and Clarion. And we invited them to come along as partners. You know, we have to remember that housing associations are essential partners to Crawley Borough Council as we sort of our housing requirements. Roughly about a quarter of our new homes going forward in the next 2 years will be built by housing associations, and they, as we've said, they provide about a quarter of our homes already. So they're an essential part of the mix of housing that we provide as a borough council. So we invited them as partners. We tried to make it clear we weren't going to just sort of have a go at them. We were very careful about how we worded the invitations, but also we wanted to learn from them and see what best practice we could gain, and also at the same time stick in a few questions that we wanted to ask about how they manage certain issues. And bluntly, frustratingly, we had one of the 4 turn up, which was Guinness Trust, and they gave us a good hour and a half, I'd say, sort of back and forth, productive back and forth on what the issues were and how things might be improved from their perspective and from our perspective. We had one who sent apologies for the various different meeting dates that we offered them, and they said they couldn't do any of them, which was slightly frustrating, and that was it. We had one who also apologised but sent us a slide pack, which was sort of a bit better than the other one, and there was one who just completely flat out refused to acknowledge even the multiple invitations, which was obviously very frustrating. So that led indirectly, and I'll come to the recommendations sort of through the consequence of it, but that effectively led to our last recommendation, which is that we requested the Cabinet Member for Housing and or the Chief Executive write to the government effectively saying we would actually like some slightly more stringent powers for scrutiny, because it felt a bit frustrating that these people are providing hundreds of homes to our residents. We've put them in there, council, and we can't really, assuming the resident isn't getting to the point of housing ombudsman, we couldn't really do much about it. So that's one of our recommendations, is for us to give more powers to scrutinise those people who provide housing in our communities, and that's recommendation 6. And that it was just a frustration that we couldn't get out of this panel because we didn't have more information from those providers. But the ones that did turn up and the officers did provide plenty of good information, and possibly the most important bit of information coming forward is that there has been a change in legislation and consumer standards, and so going forward all registered social providers have to carry out what are called tenant satisfaction measures surveys, or TSM surveys, and they'll have to do this across all their residents, or at least a significant sample of them, to provide data across them all. And we believe we should be able to also dig down into this data and get that information specific to Crawley, and what indeed Crawley homes have to do as well. So what we're broadly going to get is in the next year or so, they're going to have all our residents should be surveyed, or a good sample of them, and we should be able to compare Crawley homes residents against all the different housing providers in Crawley, and see if any are performing better and indeed any are performing worse. And that leads to recommendations A and B, which is that you'll get the information from these surveys and send it effectively into the OSC for a report, so that OSC can then on an annual basis decide what we might want to do with this information, and see if there's anything we can learn from a Crawley Homes perspective, but also challenge any of the housing association providers. So that was recommendation A and B. Then recommendation C, D and E was sort of a conglomeration of issues that we picked up from speaking both to Crawley houses and indeed the Guinness Partnership and other providers who sort of fed us some data. Basically, it's around what we could do to improve the relationship between all of these. And so we've got 3 different recommendations. Recommendation C, which came from one of our panel members, councillors, was that we have sort of regular meetings in different areas at a relevant level and local level where appropriate, where we can just discuss different issues and share practice. That basically came out of some issues we had, or that the relevant councillor had in drive area of 3 Bridges, sort of antisocial behaviour around there, and then once a sort of a partnership built up between different various agencies, so possibly the police, possibly the council from an ASC perspective, possibly the council from a social housing perspective, and also the housing association. I mean, when they got together, they could start working through these issues and more collaborative as a team. And so we wanted to see that practice disseminate across the town where appropriate and where. That's recommendation C. Recommendation D was, it turns out, even though I was a ward member for Wardfield, we're doing ward walks and in the Guinness Partnership in Wardfield, and not telling us as councillors. So they've now started doing that. That's the recommendation. And if other registered providers also do sort of walkabouts in the neighbourhood, we want councillors, local councillors, to be invited so they can attend if they want to find out what the issues are specifically in the local housing association areas. Now that's only going to work in certain areas. Housing associations have large built-up areas of property, such as the Guinness Trust in Broadfield, that won't work elsewhere. But it's basically what's going on, what community work you're doing, and then councillors get involved as and when. And finally, recommendation E was actually a recommendation from both officers and the housing association about, we know we've got either a difficult property to let because of surrounding antisocial behaviour, or a difficult tenant due to that tenant's antisocial behaviour, that the council and the housing association should let each other know the circumstances. So if it's a really unwise mix of a house with antisocial behaviour and an existing tenant antisocial behaviour issues, then we possibly don't want to turn those into one area and make it sort of a tinderbox of. So that's what recommendation is about, providing as much information both ways to make sure the best tenants fit in, or successful prior work can be carried out to make it a successful placement. And those are the 6 recommendations. The report and the work couldn't have been done, obviously, without the Democratic officer and indeed all the Crawley Borough councillors who also gave up their time, but specifically Heather. So thank you, Heather, for your work on that. And otherwise, our recommendations, I'm sure you've all read our full report to answer any questions you may have. And obviously, I'll be presenting this report to Michael and the Cabinet in September. So I think now I'll sort of build into the recommendations onto the Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lunnan. Welcome to Councillor Lanza. And do you have any disclosure of interest or whipping declarations?
Thank you, Chair. And so, yeah, I have a personal interest in item 6 as a member of Sussex County Council, and a personal interest in item 8 for the same reason, and also as a Cabinet member for Public Health and Wellbeing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting the report. I will now open it up to questions and discussion. Does have any questions, please? Councillor Jans.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that presentation, Councillor Lunnan. There's a very good overview. And the recommendations all sound very sensible, particularly the one around antisocial behaviour. In West Green in particular, one of the largest issues that I receive in terms of casework is usually to do with antisocial behaviour and also to do with mould properties. So it's good to see the around antisocial behaviour in particular. The question I had really, aside from those comments, was whether there was any discussions around shelter associations, and whether the panel looked to anything around.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, we did, to come back to your first point, we did discuss repairs, and mould has obviously shot up due to the issues. I think it was Rotherham, or certainly near Manchester. What was interesting was true of the council as well, of the association, is the cost of repairs as well. So that's been a challenge for all of them. That's what they wanted to highlight. Coming on to the second point, we didn't specifically look into sheltered housing association just because they're probably a small number of the providers. They're not specifically cut out, or weren't provided to us specifically cut out more than the rest of the housing association. So it wasn't a concern that we had at the time. And we did go around to councillors at the start of the process and ask for any specific questions or to have, and one of your fellow councillors did highlight some issues that we fed into our definition matrix, but at the time sheltered housing wasn't highlighted as a particular concern any more so than the rest of the housing association. So no, in short, sorry.
First of all, I want to note this report and thank Councillor London for bringing this report to the committee. One of the issues one of the historic issues which I've been dealing in my ward has been with a housing association that has been operating there, and I quickly want to give a shout to Unite the Union, who is doing great work on their housing campaign there. So what I want to ask now is what is the next stages of the report? Is the committee going to keep meeting, or is this like the final stage of the report?
Thank you, Councillor Khan. So in short, this is the final stage of the report. The OSC can reject all the recommendations, I suppose. I'm going to look at Heather here at this point to check that. I think the OSC can actually either support or reject all the recommendations individually or en masse. And I will take your comments on and feed them into Cabinet on the 4th of September. So I would obviously urge you all to support the recommendations. You can, of course, make your own further recommendations, having read the report and, take something else you think needs to be a formal recommendation, but then we'll then report it into Cabinet. It is a report of the OSC body. We're set up by the OSC and we're output to the OSC, and then we feed that into the Cabinet. But I think that's broadly right. So wants to correct me.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lunnan. This is the, as it says, the Scrutiny Panel's final report. The panel reports into the Commission, so this is the final report. It is down to the OSC to review the report and make comments, and to make the comments to Cabinet, which if it wants to make the recommendations, it can do. The Commission's comments will go in the Cabinet report as an appendix, because it will go into the Cabinet report into September. So the Commission's comments and or recommendations, if it wants to make any, or just the usual Commission comments, as it would do as the usual sheet, which will go as an appendix to the report in September.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd also like to echo thanks to the panel for your work. It's really important to ensure the good quality housing for our residents. In terms of the final recommendation, which is to write to the Secretary of State, I'd be interested to know whether there are any other local authorities or membership or lobbying organisations also calling greater powers to scrutinise the registered housing providers. If so, I think it feels like there'd be some value in sort of more numbers kind of giving strength to our cause.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there are, but considering that we are quite rare in having such a high percentage of locally controlled RSL in the fact that we own Crawley Home or control Crawley compared to say most other boroughs in the surround, that nearly all their social housing is effectively in the hands of housing associations. You think there'd be even greater interest from them in trying to understand what's going on. So I certainly think there'd be value in asking other local councils to see if they also would like that more. But they may also, we obviously care about housing in our town. It's a big issue for our town. We've declared a housing emergency. So, we care every aspect of housing in this town. Maybe others, have other pressing concerns that mean that housing is such a key issue. So they haven't done the work that we've obviously done.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor, just in relation to item D and if you like, the lack of other registered providers actually providing their support, how can we ensure going forward that we're actually going to get the buy-in, if you like, of the other registered providers? And on top of that, would it be useful for us to provide, we had a table split out per ward of the actual number of properties involved. Do we think that's useful for other councils to actually have sight of that?
Yeah, so just in point to the second question, it is available as I provided it to Councillor Hilton because he was interested in it. If you go through the minute of the previous report, so I can point any further councillor to that breakout of those detail. If you go through, I think it's minute of the first and then to the third meeting, you can dig out that detail. So it is useful information. How do we get their buy-ins is more difficult, and I think it will have to be, how it happened in Three Bridges by all accounts was that there was antisocial behaviour, so then it was the councillor dragging the party together to try and get a best outcome. I hope it doesn't get to that level before the parties relevantly want to get involved. But obviously we have, as councillors, great ability to sort of cause the Crawley Borough Council elements of those parties to get involved. So if that's the antisocial behaviour team, then we can, get them, and they've got good links to the police. I'm sure they'd all be keen to get something resolved if there was an issue. So then it's just a case of getting the housing provider to engage. It comes back to point 6 almost. We do struggle to get there on these issues generally, but residents are really struggling with their responses. They can obviously write to the ombudsman that's relevant, and we might also be able to use this way. If they do have a particular issue and the survey shows that their residents are less happy in Crawley, we might be able to use those two elements together to try and force their hand. But it's a good question that there's not an easy solution to, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to you and the panel for the report. I was just looking at the 2018 report on housing stock, and in fact that's using figures from 2015, in fact. But even then, at that point, there was a social housing stock as about 10,500, and about roughly 2,500 of that was registered social landlords. So it looks like quite the lack of engagement does look like quite an impact. I mean, almost a quarter of the stocks. I think you made a good recommendation in terms of seeking to enhance scrutiny powers. I might have missed it, but I'll ask you in case I didn't miss it. Within the recommendations and within the sentiment of the recommendations, is there a kind of aspiration going forward for a two-way street with respect to ourselves interacting with registered social landlords? So another way, if we got some practice that we'd like to see them adopting, can we impart that and influence? And equally, if we see some good practice from any registered social landlord, is this implicit in the recommendations for us to adopt that?
Certainly that was our intention. Coming to your second point, that was our intention of recommendation 3, or sorry, C, I think it is. I'm on the wrong report again. Sorry. So that, the recommendation C, that we have these regular meetings where the to share best practice and inform and review issues. That's really, we want to get that from both sides. And what recommendation E was about the fact that sometimes we know something that we're not told the RSL, and vice versa, that they know something about their placement that they're not telling us when we're putting a resident in there. And that came out of us talking to both sides of it, and just this is why it's in the recommendation, to try and get that best practice involved. I would also say, you know, there wasn't any evidence of sort of a them and us approach from Crawley Homes or indeed from the RSLs. There was very much a, you know, we do our things and we do them. They obviously, everybody feels they do well, but there wasn't a competition or sort of, you know, better or worse than them. It's just, you know, how they deal with the situation. And just to come to I'm going to highlight again what Councillor Hellier, if you go to the minutes of the November meeting, you can find an updated table, which I know you've used, Bob, and you're keen to. It's an updated table on the numbers, and we're actually up to just shy of 1,000 wide. That's still about a quarter of our stock, because obviously it's in stock. I don't know if you had a follow-up to my comments there. You looked like you were able to.
Thanks for those answers. Yeah, I've got that report. 2,990. Yeah. So specifically with respect to decent homes, that was a major undertaking for council. Took a long time. Do we have or are seeking sight of the progress of the registered social landlords with that specific endeavour?
Not specifically, although we believe that should come in the tenant satisfaction surveys, because we should see, you know, if a certain portion of town have less satisfaction with the quality of their housing, you would like to think that would be directly linked to the better homes quality. What we do have is complaints do go through us if the quality of the housing is enough, and we can pick up on those. But that report showed that there wasn't a particular, you know, proportion of complaints about quality of housing associations compared to Crawley Homes. And indeed, when you look at the applications of tenants to either Crawley Homes or RSLs, it's broadly in line with what the split of housing is anyway. So we don't currently see, you know, any residents not wanting to go with RSLs, and certainly the survey going forward should evidence if the RSLs are not delivering the better home standard. But it wasn't something that we actually specifically looked at, and I'd have to defer to officers specifically on that. But I mean, repairs have shot up since COVID. Number of repairs both for RSLs and for Crawley Homes, and so it's the cost of those repairs. So it suggests that tenants are getting better informed about what they can and can't ask for, which is a good thing.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. The report is very detailed, and well done for what you've done. And oh, sorry. Right then, no problem. Okay, you can do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lunn. Very, very comprehensive reports. Because you referred it to me, I did go through all those different. It's a very interesting meeting, and I wouldn't want to go into too much detail, but there were just 2 or 3 comments I'd like to make. It's a really good report, but I can sense frustration that we couldn't have too much information from the different housing associations. One of the larger housing associations, which I've got stock on my board, we're quite interested to see how they operate. There's just some people unhappy with them. I also have it does come loud and clear that the relationship between the Borough Council and the other social landlords in the town, which is good, nation rights. And and if this improves in communication between everyone, the different meetings, recommendation concerning antisocial behaviour and the other partnership, other agencies, that'd be really good. It is a bit frustrating, but I had a look earlier. I'm not sure you can be compelled to attend a parliamentary select committee. So attending a panel is not so good. It's not so good either. My own question, and actually you have kind of answered, but I think worth amplifying, is on question B that you say include the comparison of the tenant satisfaction measure surveys, which are important because this has been very top down. Until we see what they're thinking themselves, we're not entirely sure how great these tenants are. We've got everything from the different offices in this house. So until we know what the tenants think, we can't really go forward from there. You say to specifically include comparison with calls. I think it's just worth emphasising. It's not a competition, because I assume rights, one of the things is when people choose a registered social landlord rather than say Crawley Home, it's on location, I believe. Anything else, it's not like going down the estate agent's window. The house is an emergency. We want people to get the best housing and the best possible service, but sometimes needs must. So can you just confirm, as you did earlier, that it's not about showing how we're wonderful and how good or blah blah blah. It's about service standards and different expectations as well.
Well, thank you, Councillor Hilton, for your mostly warm comments. Well, they were all warm, but just you had a question at the end, so the warm comments before that. I mean, to a degree, I would say, we do want there to be some element of competition if it drives up, Crawley Home standards and indeed drives up the registered social landlords standards. That's a win for our residents, and that's ultimately what we want. We want our residents to be in the best possible, quality housing that's available. When these reports come out, you're right, sorry, to say that it has been top down. The only one of the first questions I asked was, which I have already alluded to earlier, was, do we see any difference from tenants selecting their, because that's really the only information we had to go on. While we have a Crawley Homes tenants panel, there is no housing association tenants panels that we have access to. So, the only real sort of quantitative feedback we have is how they select their houses, whether they do select Crawley Homes or housing association homes one over the other. So until we get these satisfaction measure surveys, which is obviously, should highlight that's come from legislation and consumer standards. So, we should highlight that the government and the relevant bodies have done some good work in getting these set up. Obviously, some might say that's more, but it gives us the chance to actually see how tenants are doing and what their feedback is. So really, that's the most important, one of the most important things. And obviously, you're all members of the commission, so you'll be able to read that report at some point later in the year and actually possibly suggest some actions out of it. But ultimately, it's not, I don't really mind whether it's housing association or Crawley Homes. There are benefits to both, and to say they're a key partner in more social housing in Crawley. So we don't want it to prevent housing associations from acting within Crawley. It's the last thing we'd want. But yeah, it can lead to better standards all round.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Lennon, just a question. Obviously, it's my first committee meeting and it's quite new to me. With regard to the housing providers which are registered with the council, I'm quite surprised to see that we've had to go through some sort of oversight and a scrutiny committee to get what I would think is a very, very basic level agreement we should already have in place with a registered housing association. So my question to you is, I was registered with the council, do we not have an in place, a service level agreement to say these are the standards our tenants to be able to have with regards to the housings available? If made, this is a timescale these repairs or things should be dealt with, and also possibly us having access to complaints or issues which are raised on the day, so we can review them as a third party watching them. So we don't need the housing providers necessarily to we can access the data anyway. We can to them that you're not meeting the SLA and possibly have a penalty in place for them.
There's nothing in there that I would disagree with as a declaration, but I can only say what we've currently got. The fallback for a tenant once a housing association home is effectively ombudsman, and that's who they would escalate complaints to. We would possibly be elected if it was a significant quality of the housing as a housing provider, but potentially go through the housing ombudsman. We wouldn't get involved. We would get involved if there's our behaviour team might get involved as an anti-social issue, but there's no SLA agreement. And the years, I would say, again, I'm just going to highlight our reports is that we use some housing associations. We've got 3,000. Some of them provide us 5 houses. So them as you're be massively variable on one and happy out of your 5 houses, and then your stuff. That is part of the problem. Such a diverse spread of housing stock providers. But never, I agree with you. But broadly, my understanding is, and I'm happy to be corrected, when our housing associations are selected, it's more to do around with they've got the finance available, the design plans available to build the housing that we want. Now, I'm sure we did discuss this, whether we could learn lessons about when we go forward, but usually they're the ones bringing the plans to us. They've got the site already, so it's whether we want to accept the nomination rights or not. And when you've got a waiting list of sort of probably about 3,000, is it at the moment? Yeah, it's going to be something pretty bad for you to go, no, we really don't as a housing association provider and take those nomination rights as a council. We're going to take those, probably going to take those housing association rights. And we should also highlight again, broadly, we don't see any qualitative difference between what the housing associations provide and what Crawley Homes provide from what residents broadly tell us. So I don't want you to leave here thinking the housing associations are awful. They're not. But yeah, there'd be nothing wrong with what you're suggesting, but you'd probably have to have a minimum level of housing to make that really work.
Thank you very much. My question is, I said earlier, well done for this good job. My question is around recommendation C. When you mentioned about regular meetings with relevant partners, have you considered meetings with the tenants, regular meeting with the tenants, and also some of the meetings that you are having to make it somehow public that people can attend and watch this? Because as you know, housing issue is one of the most one of the big problems in Crawley, and there are several misconceptions flying around, and people don't know what is going on, and they keep saying the wrong things about what council is doing. Have you actually totally some of these meetings that you have it been witnessed, just as we are having a meeting, people can come in and actually see, hear by themselves what is actually going on? And also on the issue of the antisocial abuse, and my true experience here, I discovered that it is not the effect of it, or the negative effect of this is not just by the people there, but also by the surrounding and other facilities there. And they will also some of these people will also express their own concerns, and so I don't know if you have that when some of these meetings are being held, it is that the week witness to these meetings, and they are allowed to ask questions and also make you have a kind of understanding of the broader picture of what's going on. Thank you.
I mean, at the moment, we're just trying to sort of suggest these meetings should be set up. So the format of those meetings would depend on each area and who it is. But certainly, I'll take your points on board. I think, if residents were to attend, it depends on what the issue is. If discussing a particular problem tenant, it's probably not advisable to have that in a public forum, because that would obviously be, not best practice, I don't think. But I'm not an social behaviour expert, but I certainly agree that it is an absolute scourge that brings down multiple people and can be very frustrating. That's why I spent a lot of time discussing it in this thing. But yeah, certainly I can pass on the recommendation that they are publicised when it happens. But at the moment, apart from maybe in Commonwealth Drive, we're not entirely sure it is happening. So that's really what we do, is just get a bit more sort of regular practice going forward, that they do have these meetings.
Yes. One suggestion that I would like to raise is there a possibility for these housing providers around Crawley to regularly meet with the council? Oh, sorry. One suggestion which I want to raise is there any opportunity or situations where the housing providers in the borough council on a regular basis? That can be considered.
I mean, considering they didn't want to meet with us on a one-off basis, the chance to get them turning up to a regular meetings, you know, onerous for perspective. I'm sure that, you know, that certainly on a regular basis, you know, they'll be dealing with the residents, but, you know, there's possibly also only a couple of officers from housing associations dealing with each area, even less so for the very small ones. So that's broadly what we're trying to get to with recommendation C, is to get a bit more regular meeting between all these relevant partners. You know, could be the antisocial behaviour team, could be the housing association, but you actually get a whole lot of them in the room. We can do that for a one-off. So, you know, we're not that hopeful that we can do it on a regular basis across the whole town. This is why recommendation C is a bit more localised for each individual area, where officers might feel more, you know, the relevant housing officer for the Guinness Trust might be a bit more empowered to take action around the Guinness Trust, representing the whole of the Guinness Partnership in front of the council. Maybe that was the reason they didn't get involved, but we'd love it to happen, but I don't think it will. What's my answer?
All right. Is there any authority that the council could make that happen? I'm guessing there's not.
We tried. We got Ian to write to the chief executive, and they, as I highlighted earlier, one of them did turn up. One of them sent it back. One of them said sorry and one made us. So, and that was multiple. I can assure you that was multiple attempts by the officers involved, and attempts by the officers involved. So, yeah.
So the letter to be written to the Secretary of State, could we include one of those lobby demands, or something to do? Or, so the letter that is actually being written to the Secretary of State, is that something we could include in the letter to? I
mean, that's been written. It's being written. We're recommending that it's be written by the executive and or the cabinet member. So I'm sure your questions will be passed on to them. All we're saying is we think we want to highlight that we want more scrutiny back.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right, sorry. Move the Commission's notes of the report and request reviews expressed during the debate are fed to the Cabinet as an appendix to the main Cabinet report for consideration at the meeting of the 4th of September. I ask that the Vice Chair second this.
Yes, I second that.
Item 6. We move to the financial turn report from Councillor Jones, Council Caroline Marchford. Said that correct? Thank you. And Corporate Finance, and Vicky, Chief Accountant. Got that right as well? Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones, will you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. 2023-24 was an extremely challenging year for the Council. I'm sure many of us noticed that. Officers and members worked tirelessly to take corrective action during the year as expenditure pressures continue to increase. Now, the final outturn is comprised of a large number of variations that you'd expect with the detail that's contained within the report. Just to briefly cover those key variants, Chair, temporary accommodation remains the main area of this expenditure pressure over which the Council has no direct control. The Council has declared emergency as the current demand on the Council to provide temporary accommodation is not sustainable. Our sound management of the Council's finances has meant that despite unrelenting pressure and this government's cuts to our budgets year on year, managed to continue to deliver for people and provide excellence across our services. The net expenditure for temporary accommodation showed a significant improvement in the last quarter due to some grants applied. It's also assumed that the council will receive full funding for the Chagosian related expenditure, although this has still not been received as tonight's meeting. Nevertheless, there are underlying pressures. They remain are increasing. Previously been briefed that the availability of temporary accommodation in the borough is severely limited, with the council competing with London boroughs and the Home Office. The Home Office certainly doesn't have the same restrictions around benefit subsidy that we do. Now, the amount recoverable by the council from housing benefit is frozen to 2011 local housing rates, which means the cost of additional units for the council has significantly increased. Traditionally has always been out of pocket covering these costs, but the impact of the continuing freezing of these, what is it now, 13 years ago, many of us are paying rent or mortgage, if we were paying it on the rates of what they were 13 years ago, we'd all be a lot happier, but unfortunately we don't have that luxury here. The council continues to proactively lobby government to recognise that the rising demand and the cost of homelessness must be fully funded, and that the current situation poses a critical risk to the council's financial resilience as well as the local government sector. So that obviously is a backdrop to a lot of this. I think another key variance is just related to issues relating to the new town hall. Now, the investment in the new town hall is a good thing because it will secure long-term income which the council can use to provide frontline services for residents. And with the work of secure tenants and the ones we've already achieved, because we've had very successful outcomes in renting out the top floors to our new commercial tenants. That does mean, unfortunately, there are some variances in the budget. Now, we've grouped these together because they're all interlinked to a certain extent, and that's the new town hall, the Create building, and the old town hall. And as these projects are linked, I think that gives an idea of what's going on. The variance relates to, amongst other things, district heat network. Members were briefed in detail about this in quarter 3. But a combination of factors have led to the additional budget pressures with the district heat network. The DHN is modelled to produce a 4% return over a 40-year period, with the risk being in the early years as the project's established. Now, there will continue to be a gap in income until the old town hall site is developed as the finance model and the most efficient head loads, including the demand that redevelopment will deliver. So we expect the cost to the council to fall moving forwards, but there is the ongoing question in relation to the old town site related to the connection cost income and what I've just mentioned there. We also have to remember that, yes, with the DHN model, it's a 40-year model, so we would aim to recoup that moving forward as more properties join the network. Now, should we move to expansion in the second phase of the DHN, this would more than address any current deficit. So I think the message here is that I don't think we want to get unduly angry about this now. It's not hugely helpful, but we're not panicking at the moment. It's inconvenient. We're looking at ways that we can balance those costs forwards, and we're not complacent about that at all. Business rates for the new town hall, they are, although our rental income for the floor is a bit higher than we thought it was going to be, which is great. There is also a commensurate reflection on the rateable value, because what we get charged is based on rental income, and as that, we pay more on that. Now, in the it's still more favourable than not. It's having the extra money from rent than it is the additional rate value. But saying that, it does mean there's been a bit of a knock on the accounting for that. Talking about rateable value a little bit more, town hall. Members were aware the old town hall should have been transferred from council ownership at the start of the financial year. We've got a capital receipt for that. So the fact that we still own it and it's our responsibility means that there's probably some relatively significant expenditure that we didn't anticipate that we'd be having to pay. Now, the council employed a specialist rating to take the old town hall out of rating. The advice we applied to take it out. Now, unfortunately, this application was refused by the Valuation Office, which has meant that we've had an additional expenditure of, I think it's £103 in the final quarter. Now, this is unhelpful, and I think I fundamentally disagree with the conclusions of the Valuation Office, but we are where we are, and we're now considering whether there's steps we can take to take the old town hall out of rating until a time when it is demolished. Now, there are ways to do that, but it might be more structured to go straight to the final step. Electricity and heating, related to the new building, they were higher than anticipated. The budget estimates of the likely cost of energy in the building, and our business model assumes the cost of heating is shared by tenants. Now, this service charge pay, which will cover that, does actually get paid until occupation takes place. With the delay there was in occupation, they're moving in now, or very soon in some cases. Although the contracts have been signed, it's meant that the council had a greater share of the cost over that time. Now, this should be much less of an issue over the coming months, but it just means that it's had that additional impact. I think overall, just on that, to finish on that point, Chair, the business model that we have developed works. We're early in the process, and there have been some variants, but we are confident that the modelling is sound. These are long-term investments, and we think that once you look over several years or on the longer term, overall this will be corrected. But it's not all been bad news. Chair, we have some very positive variances, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. There's been some very favourable variations. We've had increased car parking income at Kingsgate and Orchard Street, and there's also been a reduction in the repairs in relation to the refuse fleet after our significant capital investment. So that's all had a beneficial impact. Also, due to thrifty investments, we've had £1.341 million interest on our investments than we had originally projected, which I think is excellent. And my wishes to the team who are all in house, who I believe helped do that. That's a real feather in their cap. We also review our budget through the year, and there's been planned in-year savings of just under £1.5 million. So I think that's been very important. And there's also been a range of significant savings made through the year in management decisions, which are reported in Appendix 1.2. So in conclusion, on the general fund, we were broadly in line with the forecast. But thanks to the investment income and a one-off business rates adjustment, we're about just under £450,000 better off than we projected. So that leaves the general fund balance at 3.8 million with another challenging period ahead. So I think the message that I would be giving to councillors is that this is. The good news is we're in a slightly better position than we were, but I've got to stress the word is slightly. There will still have to fundamentally be significant things done over the next financial year to ensure that the council remains in a prudent and stable financial state, which we can definitely achieve, I believe. But it does mean that we've still got challenges to come. Just to briefly cover the housing revenue account, Chair, the HRA was under similar pressure as a general fund with generally increasing costs. Just under 12 million was added balances, so overall that's a reduction of 502,000 against the original budget. Capital, there were no capital overspends, with budgets being carried forward to this financial year to complete the programme. And just overall, just on the reserves, the council reserves have reduced. Some have enabled the refuse fleets, and again, that's saving in terms of other general maintenance to the fleet by buying new vehicles in the final quarter, and the purchase of temporary accommodation, which is another reason for the reduction in reserves, will help us to reduce the revenue cost to the council. So there is fundamentally sound reasons for doing this. So we are operating in challenging circumstances. I would pay tribute to all our officers, CMT, the finance officers. This is a good outcome considering all these challenges, and demonstrates the sound management that is going on despite those difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you for presenting the report. I will now open it up to questions and a discussion. Do any councillors have any questions, please? No? Sorry. Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Can I just ask, just looking at the contract overspend, which is quite significant, how can we ensure moving forward that we aren't going to see significant overspending in terms of repairs contracts, and that it's not going to continue to actually sort of rise? I think there have been a lot of issues in terms of damp, mould and other issues in properties, and how can we budget for that effectively?
I can. I'm very happy if the officers want to come in at any point, Chair. But repairs contract is concerned. Clearly, I'm very happy for the cabinet member in this as well. We would prefer our estimates to be accurate, but given the level of demand that has been, which has been significant, there's been a judgment call that it's been the right thing to do to actually increase the money that's spent in order to address those problems of having it fester, because it does good if that happens. So Helen, you're absolutely right that there is a much higher awareness of damp, mould. There's been a bit of a legal industry that's also about pursuing councils and social landlords in terms of the disrepair or of council housing or social housing. We have spoken to the office because our feeling isn't so much that we begrudge the repairs, if that's the amount that's necessary. We want to ensure that there's a more accurate picture in terms of what comes out. We don't keep getting overspends when actually overspend. It's just actually a more realistic amount that has to be spent. I will make no apology, the cabinet member won't, that we have prioritised repairs. It is important. It's important for the quality of life of our tenants. And also, something which I've noticed is that you compare the repairs record of homes, and even if it's not perfect, and believe me, when I look at my post bag, I know that sometimes getting things done, and, you know, I'm sure all the councillors we've had experience of needing to get involved and ask where things have got to. But saying that, I will maintain that Crawley has an excellent record in comparison to most other social landlords, certainly in the borough that I'm aware of, and that our commitment remains very strong on this, and it is only an indication of where we are. Now, clearly, there is not an unlimited fund for this, and we recognise that. But saying that, the HRA isn't under quite the same strains as you know, the general fund is, in terms of it's got a ring fenced fund, which is I don't want to go as far as say it's very healthy, but in comparison to the general fund, we don't have quite the pressures. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to accept the invitation to say something. I completely agree with everything Councillor Jones has said. I mean, what we've seen over the last few years is that it's very difficult to accurately budget for repairs, because, you know, ever since COVID, and this was something which did seem to originate during the COVID and the period of lockdown, the price of raw materials for building work is absolutely rocketed. Initially, it was basic things like plaster, and it's got on to other matters. And for me, that was one of the, it was actually gratifying, but it was kind of validating that I attended one of the Housing Association Scrutiny panel meetings to give evidence, along with the representative from the Guinness Trust. She did say that they'd experienced exactly the same thing in their organisation, that, you know, that repairs costs had actually, to coin a phrase, gone through the roof. We're not alone in that. It is a sort of across the whole sector. And to be honest, Chair, I'd be more disappointed if we didn't spend the money, because even if an overspend on a sort of you know, an artificial line in the sand that is called a budget, because if you don't spend the money now on fixing problems, then those problems are only going to get worse, and it's going to cost even more money further down the line. So really, we've taken a risk approach, a pragmatic approach, probably the only approach we can take, other than allowing our housing stock to disrepair.
Yeah, as this is a budget report, I'm just wondering whether it's not prudent to actually put in a contingency in terms of our budgets to cover for the increasing costs and the increasing spend that we actually have on some of these areas.
You put in contingency budgets, but we feel this is more transparent so that members get an overview of what is happening. And to answer the sort of efficiency question as well, the council has embarked on a comprehensive condition survey. When results come in, the plan is to get the shift to planned maintenance, which should reduce those costs. But as members have said, and clearly pointed out, costs have increased significantly. They just seem to continue to do so. But as Head of Finance, I'm a fan of contingency budgets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, thank you for your report. Could I just ask for paragraph 9.9 relating to the second recommendation fleshed out slightly? It's just, is it envisaged that the senior project manager will be a permanent just for the next few years? And also, presumably the quoted cost of 71k is all encompassing, so it includes their pension and it includes office equipment and so on, rather than just their salary, for example.
I'm happy if Caroline wants to come in, but it does include everything in it, and it is permanent. The reasoning behind this increase in the built environment team was that there was an observation that our capital programme is quite ambitious and quite extensive, And actually, when you've got members of staff who are solely working on capital programs, you can actually then fund from that rather than the revenue budget. So one of the real issues that the council's had over the last couple of years now, is that because our programme is so ambitious, and we really are head and shoulders over most borough and district councils that we could be compared to in terms of what we're doing and the scope of our was actually one of the bottlenecks we were now experiencing was in the built environment team. We just literally didn't have enough officers that we could actually get all there weren't enough hours in the day to actually get the number of projects that we wanted to get done. So that's why it's there. I think we're pretty confident that that's going to cover everything that's required on everything related to this. And the beautiful thing about it is it will slot in very well with then actually developing all our capital programme plans that we have budgeted for. I hope that addresses the point. If it doesn't, I apologise.
No second question for me. Thank you.
You go first. Thank you, Chair. I have to speak because the overriding overshadow of this report is homelessness and the cost of temporary housing and the fact we've got housing for the and it sounds like we bang on about it, but you look at an overspend of £3 million, see how much we've got to take out of reserves as a result. That's what we need to do, and I think anything you can do, but it just comes back to things to ameliorate that issue. Obviously, the change to try and get a change to have local housing allowance rates. That the Home Office themselves don't have to be about that themselves, and yet we do. It concerns me. I don't know. I presume that's been raised. I think it was raised in the House of Emergency letter in February before, and I hope we continue to do that and look at all ways of managing the get it down. Have we got any other? The figures was 280 in December 2023. Have we got anything for March 24 yet? The last quarter. In terms of paragraph 5.4, the night paid rise was 206 in April 2023 to a peak of 280, and I think it's worth mentioning as well to the wider public that it's the cost of the housing, isn't it? It's not just the demand, it's increased costs of paid nights, and anything we can do to help that, I think, will be a good thing. But that is the thing, isn't it? On the last section of paragraph 4, however, it's difficult to protect future growth between households in night paid rise from 2006 in April 23 to a peak of 2080 in December 2023. We're quite interested to know how we're getting on in the last quarter. Obviously, December is the winter months, and I wonder if it goes down slightly after that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, the report includes the final quarter, and the peak is in December, but it hasn't gone down by much, and I'm sorry, I haven't got the exact figures, but yeah, the peak was in December, but and obviously we've had the sort of recent additions as well. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for the report. Just in terms of recommendation, I have to check whether we're anticipating any changes to the Better Care Fund, given it was previous government policy. Yeah, just in terms of recommendation F, I wanted to check whether we were anticipating any changes to the Better Care Fund under the new government.
I think it's still too early to say. we're not envisaging. We think the current year should be money should be there. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at obviously as Councillor as well, I was quite concerned about this homelessness issue that we're getting, the associated cost to the council. Looking at the TA spend from 2019-20 to 2021, it seems like a massive jump, and if I'm not mistaken, that's just post-COVID or during the period where this is sort of increased massively, and then it's gone significantly up against in 23-24 again. And that possibly could possibly be related to the high interest rates that a lot of private landlords are facing, and as a result people are unable to afford those rents in Crawley, and as a result are coming to the councils for assistance, and hence the is increasing in that sense. And if that is the case, as Councillor Hilton said, I agree with that this is something that needs to be fed back on a national level to be addressed, because obviously this is not sustainable if this is going to keep going up at an exponential rate like this, and more and more people are not able to afford private rents, and they're going to have to come to the council for that, and we don't have the houses for it. And the TA system is supposed to, as it says, it's supposed to be temporary. And I would like to know from the panel how long do people tend to stay in temporary accommodation in Crawley, please?
Well, there's a number of different contributing factors to why why there's increasing people creating themselves as homeless and requiring support from the council. Clearly, one of the major factors is the increasing affordability of rent in the private rent sector in Crawley. It's not the only reason, but it's a significant reason. There's been a reduction in stock because a number of landlords sold their properties because they couldn't afford mortgages because of the high interest rates. I think there's just been a general short supply as well. I mentioned earlier on that we've had London boroughs, we've had the office booking up hotels across the borough. All of these things make a difference, and they pushed the prices up. There was a second question you had, Councillor Khan, and I've forgot. Sorry.
It was relating to the number of people in temporary accommodation and how.
Right. Yes. I think if I can give you apologies to any councillor who this might sound familiar, but for the new members, I'd like to give you give you an image. If it describes the situation with temporary accommodation. People who with temporary accommodation now, the average time there is increasing because there is nowhere to move them on to, and we are still paying the prices on it, and they are still going up. So I'll give you the image of imagine a sink where the tap is on and the plug is in, and the water is steadily running. You can't turn the tap off and pull the plug out. That's essentially where we are with all this. And it's one of the things that really stresses, I think, all of us about this is never mind the financial implications of this, which are enough, but there's, most if not all of these stories, there is a tale of human tragedy or human misery that goes along with it. People don't present homeless to the council out of lightly. There is, these are people who have reached crisis point in their lives, and they need help. Now, we as a council do the best we can under statutory requirements, because we have to owe them a statutory duty, and that's government criteria, not our own. Yes, I couldn't give you the precise figures, but the length of time that people are spending in temporary accommodation has got a lot longer. Our officers have also tried as hard as we can to keep people within the borough, but that is increasingly not possible in some cases, and that causes a lot of distress for households that find that they need to be moved out, because certainly for larger families as well, like very large families, it's very difficult to find a suitable accommodation locally, so they can go very far afield indeed.
Can I just make one other comment? Just in terms of the right to buy, a lot of people on our side would have liked to got rid of the right to buy years ago. I think it's amazing how few houses are being sold on right to buy, which is a reflection of the economic situation we find ourselves. If I'd, as chairman of housing in the early 90s, looked at only sold 3 or 4 houses a week, our housing stock would be 1,000. So it's an indication that there's people in real need living in our houses at the moment, and the extent of housing emerges in this town.
Without getting into a protracted debate about the rights and wrongs to right to buy, Chair, as Councillor Hilton's mentioned, the current numbers are actually incredibly low. The issue with right to buy probably was that regardless of people exercising their rights, what should have happened was that those units were replaced and the money was given so councils and social housing providers could do it. And that didn't happen, and that didn't happen for a protracted period of time, and that is a significant contributing factor to even Crawley Homes. Crawley Borough Council is a large social landlord, but our stock is a fraction of what it was at its extent, and that we need to recognise, because although I'm absolutely certain that there were many residents of Crawley who exercised their and took right to buy and benefited from that. Ultimately, what that has meant is that there are now families, there are now households in Crawley who, because of that lack of foresight in replacing those houses, are not able to get those for themselves, and the traditional promise that the new town has had, that there would be a house for them and there'd be a house for their children and their children didn't happen. But you can go back to the early 80s and implemented, and that is just where we are, Council. It needs to be recognised that any sort of reduction in our stock that has a social impact, and protracted short-sightedness actually put us in a position which is fundamentally disastrous, I would say, in terms of the lack of affordable housing in the borough, and causing huge issues.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to chip in a little bit. I'm really glad to what the leader has said. He's absolutely all in a nutshell. But I'd just like to put a little word on behalf of our staff dealing with homelessness. I was advised last month, possibly not before, that our housing staff are dealing with 50 cases each on average. The recommendation from the Department of Communities and Local Government under the previous Conservative was that the officers should have between 25 and 30 cases. So our staff are certainly working under pressure, and if we employed more staff to try and relieve some of that, the cost of the council would be even bigger. It seems to be a situation that we can't really win at the moment. We can just hope that things get better.
Thank you. All council and committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so I will move recommendation. The Commission notes the report and requests views expressed during the debate back to Cabinet through the Commission sheet, and ask for Vice Chair to second, please.
Yes, I second that.
Thank you. Item 7. We will now consider the Treasury Management Outturn report, also from Councillor Jones, Caroline and Vicky. Councillor Jones, will you please introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my best. Some of the more technical aspects I might have to refer to the officers. The Council is required by the regulations issued by the Government Act to produce an annual management review of activities in the year, reviewing Outturn compared to the Treasury Management Strategy. The report provides details of the Outturn position for Treasury activities and highlights compliance with the Council's policies previously approved by members. I think the key note, Chair, are that all the Council was in compliance with the approved management strategy. However, I would just draw members' attention that the Council reached its authorised limit for external debt, which is debt for a short period. This was the result of a dip in short-term cash flow, which was met through short loans from authorities. Now, since the operational boundary is a tool for in-year monitoring, it's not significant if the boundary is breached on occasion due to variations in cash flow, so it's not counted as a compliance failure. However, we have paid attention to this limit. Now, the operational authorised limit for 24-25 has been reviewed with the assistance of the Treasury advisors, and a revised operational boundary and which is detailed in reports been put forward for approval to avoid any breaches. The capital expenditure was fully financed, so there was no borrowing required, which is good news. I'm not sure how much longer we'll be able to say that, but we for this year. The Council received an average rate of return of 5% from its management of its day-to-day cash flows, Treasury investments, despite having a couple of legacy investments that were at much lower rates than that. So we are performing in a comparable rate to all authorities, and I think some of those better investments are already starting to deliver some real benefits, and I think that was actually reflected in the Outturn as well. The Council also has non-Treasury investments, which is its commercial properties. Those achieved an average return of 8.8%, disregarding the Create building, which is yet to be fully occupied. So if and hopefully when we achieve that, then that could go up as well. Annex 2 shows we've got a number of good deals locked in that continue, at least for the time being, in 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you for presenting the report. I will now open it up to questions and the discussion. Do any councillors have any questions, please? Hillier.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the investments, and I'm assuming that you'll be able to answer this quite quickly. A lot of these have already matured, so we've presumably rolled over the investment. So things like obviously Kirklees Metropolitan, where we actually had a very low interest rate. Do we have any sort of blended rates at all that will give us a higher rate of tax, given that this is a quarter as at 31st of March, so we're now beyond 30th of June. Do we have a feel for what that would be like now?
Thank you. Yes, a lot of the low ones have dropped out now, which is our sort of average up. The rates have obviously been getting better, so we should be doing better this year. The next report we bring you, those much higher rates. Yes, because this is a time, so obviously hold on.
I move that the Commission notes the report and requests that the views expressed during the debate are fed back to the Cabinet through the Commission's comment sheet, and ask that the Vice Chair second, please.
Yes, I second that.
Thank you. Right. So we now move on to item 8, which is the last meeting of the HASC place on the 19th of June. Councillor Khan, may we please have an update on that meeting, please?
Good evening, everyone. So I will give a brief update on the committee, and then we'll be happy to answer anything that come my way. So the first item which I would like to talk about is the performance and resources report. So this was a report that was given by the Finance and Support Services, the finance and performance position at the end of 2024. Let's go to my notes. So of the adult services, of 9 performance measures that are being measured, 33% of the performance measures are reporting as green, and 20% is reporting amber, and 44% of services are in the red. The number of rated key performance indicators has remained the same since the last quarter, and on public health, of the 9 performance measures, 33% are reporting as green, 44% are reporting as amber, 22% are as reporting as red, and the same applies as last note. And I also want to go over the work programme, planning and possible items for future scrutiny. So one is the contract arrangements for the nurses' dementia residence care beds, and the other one, which I will come to after this one. So if we talk about the contract arrangements, in 2022, a decision was taken to award a block contract for 11 dementia nurses beds at Astor Grove in Northampton. So and this contract is being reviewed, and the West Sussex County Council are currently also in the process of researching hospital discharge care contract for 2025. And those were the most important parts. Those were the most important. There were so on item 11, there was no request for call-ins to the committee within its constitutional remit. The next meeting will be held on September 2024, on the 18th of September 2024. Thank you.
Forthcoming discussion list is featured on your agenda and also on the Council's website. I will ask Heather to list those that are being referred. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. So looking at the forthcoming decision list, we have the following items heading to Cabinet on the 4th of September. We have the 24-25 budget monitoring quarter 1. We have Ashdown House High Street capital contribution of works. This is to secure capital funding for works on the property. The report is also going to Council. We also have Crawley Innovation Centre electricity innovation works, which seeks Cabinet approval for environment. It's capital monies within the Crawley Towns Fund programme for the Crawley Centre, and currently we have the Crawley Management Contract Extension, although that might actually move to later in the year. And following the report earlier, the OSC is also due to receive a on the tenant satisfaction results from Crawley Homes at the OS meeting on the 2nd of September. The Constitution states that the role and scope of the Commission is to monitor and review the delivery and performance of services, which is why, as you're aware, it received a transformation plan. So it's that the Commission scrutinises the tenant satisfaction results, and as you've seen in the Housing Association Scrutiny Panel. Quarter one is already coming to OSC, so if you have any of those other reports, House, Crawley Innovation, electricity infrastructure works, or Crawley Leisure Management contract, then can you please let me know? And for your training, please remember that it needs to add value to the OSC or you refer. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will now come to Part B, exemption report. This is a confidential section of the meeting. That under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act by virtue of the paragraphs specified against the item. The recording and the live stream were now finished, so I wish to thank everyone for watching. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Thank you.